as well. Do stick around for that. For the meantime, though, here on RT International, amid the ongoing rallies and a looming presidential election, Ukraine's neo-Nazi movement has been blossoming. And while the latest violence in Kiev has forced the EU to finally admit to the large radical threat, it could be a case of too little too late, as RT's Irina Galushko reports.
We've seen the violence. We've heard the statements.
The right sector's fighters are ready. I will destroy anyone who comes here. I will hang the Interior Minister Avakov like a dog.
Ukrainian extremist ultra-nationalist groups, such as the right sector, made blast waves in the recent coup in Ukraine. Moscow has been sounding the alarm for some time, but only now do Western officials appear to have gotten the memo.
I strongly condemn the pressure by activists of the right sector who have surrounded the building of the Verkhovna Rada in Ukraine. I call on the right sector and other parties in Ukraine to refrain from the use of threat of violence.
Right sector, perhaps the best known of the Ukrainian ultra-right groups, has racked up quite a record, besieging the parliament in Kiev on several occasions, instigating violence and bloodshed during the riots, stealing arms from weapons depots during the unrest. Most recently, their group's leader, presidential hopeful Dmitry Yarosh, was seen getting around town in a luxury armored van that used to belong to ousted President Yanukovych's son. The right sector confirmed the seizure with the comment, quote, "Do you want us to buy cars during a revolution?" But until now, these actions have gone by unnoticed or ignored by the West. Some experts believe the timing of this sudden change of heart can be easily explained.
When it was Mr. Yanukovych who was in power, the European Union didn't like him, and so it supported the protests and in fact denied at that time that there was any real violence on the part of the protesters at all. It alleged that all the violence came from the police and from the security forces, which I think people who were observing what was happening found incredible. Now, when the government is a pro-European government, these forces have suddenly become a matter of concern.
Brussels may be removing the rose-colored glasses now, but it may be too late to hold back the main force behind the bloody coup that overthrew the government in Kiev, now that it has been unleashed. Irina Galushko, RT.
And let's cross.
Taking state buildings in different cities and towns, protesting against the authorities in Kiev and asking for a referendum to be held here to get more independence from the center. We've heard earlier from the authorities in Kiev also that all kinds of troops and units will be taking part in these operations. So far, the country's defense ministry only confirmed the operation in the town of Kremagorsk, north of Donetsk, where we are now. The city's airport became the epicenter of the clashes there. We hear from local residents that helicopters and fighter jets are currently flying over this town. Some eyewitnesses report that fighter jets have been firing at the airport, and the leader of so-called Donbass reports that at least 4 members of his movement have been killed during this operation, and there are also reports that there are injuries in this town. We also hear from eyewitnesses that in the town of Slavyansk, also here in Donetsk region, where tanks and armored vehicles and troops have been gathering for several days already, local residents report some kind of activity, but again, so far the country's defense ministry only confirms the beginning of the operation in one town here in Donetsk region.
Maria Finoshina there. Well, people across the southeast have been reporting sightings of armoured vehicles earlier today closing in on the cities. Here's some footage that's been posted on YouTube, by the way, by some residents of one eastern Ukrainian town. You won't want to meet this, would you? Let's take a look. Pretty formidable sight to come across, isn't it? As you can see, locals there stopped that tank allegedly on its way from Kiev to take part in the operation against rest of eastern cities. And activists say, though, the assault machine surrendered after it failed to escape from self-defense volunteers there. Don't forget RT.com, where we'll keep you up to speed and all the latest, bring all the latest comment too. The military advance by Ukraine into its eastern regions has seen the Russian Foreign Minister call the move an extremely dangerous development. Sergei Lavrov also says that those who encouraged the current authorities in Kiev must bear full responsibility for what happens. Let's turn now to Maciej Piskorski. He's a political scientist at the European Centre of Geopolitical Analysis. He's on the line. Hi there, Maciej. Thanks for being with us. And within the last hour, we've been hearing Jay Carney, the White House spokesman, about the military assault that's underway in Ukraine. Let's first of all take a listen to what he had to say, then we'll pick up on those comments. Let's listen.
Washington.
We have counseled restraint in the handling of this crisis by the Ukrainian government, and we have been admiring of the restraint that the Ukrainian government has shown. And we urge the Ukrainian government to move forward gradually, responsibly, and with all due caution as it deals with this situation.
Well, is it doing that, in fact? Armoured vehicles, military jets, can that be regarded, Maciej, as restraint?
Well, to be honest, I think that it's not a coincidence that the director of Central Intelligence Agency, Mr. John Brennan, has just visited Kiev a few days ago. As far as we know, he has met several Ukrainian officials of the de facto government. As far as we know, he has met also the representatives and heads, chiefs of military forces, of special forces there. So everything
what was he bringing to the party, so to speak?
There is an evidence that it's...
Yeah, what was he bringing? What was he bringing? Was he giving, was he saying, we're with you solidly, we're behind you here, whatever happens? What specifically, I wonder, was he coming to say? What do you think?
Well, I guess that there is a close connection between the heads of Ukrainian Secret Service, including Mr. Nalivaychenko, the head of the Security Service of Ukraine, and CIA, and there were several materials published and several proofs of that even before. So we can think of Mr. Brennan coming to Kiev and giving some advice or even instruction how to deal with the protests in the east part of Ukraine. And before, I would like to point out, and I would like to notice that just a few days before the visit of Mr. Brennan to Kiev, there have been an article published by Zbigniew Brzeziński, as we all know, a great authority for all American policymakers, when he called for a war against the so-called separatists, for a war against the Russian intervention, which actually did not happen, but anyway, it was a kind of warmongering just before the visit of Mr. Brennan. And then we have, as a consequence, all these tragical, let's say, activities and all these deaths and injuries among the protesters in the east. So, well, it's a kind of, by the way, it's a kind of huge double standard and hypocrisy because in February we could notice and hear the appeals of Mr. Obama calling for a peaceful resolution of the conflict, calling to then President Mr. Yanukovych to withdraw the military forces from Kiev, and I would like to remind that these were
Well, the US is calling protesters in southeast Ukraine pro-Russian militias. We've been out to speak to people there ourselves to ask their thoughts and why they're taking part in the protests.
I have a Ukrainian passport, but hopefully soon that will be replaced with a passport of an independent Republic of Donetsk.
We got intimidated. Our rights and language were undermined. Our miners are working extremely hard, but look at our towns. They are left in complete disarray. We categorically reject the authorities in Kiev.
For about a month, we went to Lenin Square demanding a referendum or to join Russia. Nobody listened to us, neither the local authorities nor those in Kiev. Only after the seizure of administrative buildings took place, only then did they hear our voices.
We're here to defend the administration building of regional administration from the right sector. We expect an operation against us at any moment.
I used to serve as a volunteer in Serbia, and I'm a former personal bodyguard of the President Yanukovych. I did not just come here today, I've been here from the beginning.
We came out here to defend our men. Because if Kiev sends troops here, we won't allow that to happen. We will stand up as a life shield, because we won't allow our Donetsk to be burned like they burned Maidan Square in Kiev.
This is my greeting to the right sector.
If they start attacking us with weapons, we'll figure out how to arm ourselves.
Well, anger's also flared up in the capital too. This time it's Maidan activists. They've surrounded and tried to storm Parliament, giving the president 24 hours to deal with the unrest in the east. Let's get more on that from RT's Irina Golushka. She's in Kiev. Hi there. Tell us what's happening there now then, please, Irina.
Well, as a matter of fact, we're seeing again the internal strife, you may say, between the people on the Maidan who have been brought here back at the end of last year, who essentially haven't left. Majority of them are from western parts of Ukraine, which traditionally, you can say, has been seeing Russia as a foe. Well, now the activists who have essentially brought about the coup in Kiev and who have essentially brought to power those who we are seeing as interim government after locking the state parliament, the Rada, and demanding that the parliamentaries there elect the people that the crowds from the Maidan wanted to see as their leaders. Well, now once again they're going to the very same Rada, to the very same parliament, and demanding a severe crackdown on the people they're calling separatists in the southeastern region of Ukraine. And they're saying that the reserve troops from Ukraine's security services and from the internal ministry be brought out from reserve and be put towards the clampdown in southeastern Ukraine. And they're saying if that is not done, that the radicals who are here, who are still present here on the Maidan, themselves are ready to go and confront the pro-Russian protesters. In fact, some of them have demanded that they be handed out weapons, saying if that isn't done by the interim authorities in Kyiv, then they are going to take those weapons by force. So once again, we're seeing the internal strife between the people who have been bringing up about the unrest in Kyiv, who have started it all a couple of months ago, and the people that they have essentially brought to power.
Irina Golushka, thank you. Future calls that have been labelled as separatism and terrorism by the coup-appointed government. Military units have been gathering in a town on the border between the Kharkov and Donetsk regions, the hotbeds of the unrest. From there, they've moved to the city of Kramatorsk. Activists say the city airport has been fired at by military jets. They're reporting injuries. There are also unconfirmed reports of fatalities. We've been talking all this weekend about the town of Sloviansk. Big town, more than 100,000 people live there. Locals say armoured vehicles have completely cut off all entrances to that particular town-stroke city. We will, of course, bring the latest details on this fast-developing story throughout the coming hours and days here on RT International with a prime source for your information.